back, viewers, to another session with your favorite doctor, Dr. Man's Wisdom. I guess you're wondering what you're going to be talking about today. Today we will be discussing digestion. Yeah, that's right, digestion. When I talk about digestion, I'm talking about the food that you have eaten. So I want you to imagine, I want you to take a picture. We're going to be talking about that food that you had for breakfast, that food you'll be having for lunch, and probably that food you had for supper. So we will be talking about the digestive system. Now, you might be wondering what digestion is. Before we move on to digestion, I want us to know what ingestion is. Before we start with digestion, we start with ingestion. Now, ingestion is the introduction of food into the mouth. Before your food goes through any complicated processes, it has to be introduced. There has to be some sort of introduction. This is what ingestion is all about, and it is a process. It has been deemed a process because it is very important. So, ingestion is the introduction of food into the mouth. Now, we move on to a more difficult process, not difficult, more advanced process that I call digestion. What is digestion? Digestion is the process by which ingested, complex, insoluble food substances are made into simple, soluble, absorbable, food substances that can be absorbed by the body. So, what is digestion? Digestion is the process by which ingested, complex, insoluble food substances are made into simple, soluble, absorbable food substances that can be absorbed by the body. So that is what digestion is all about. We have talked about ingestion as introduction of food into the mouth, and we have talked about digestion. Now, everything has a beginning. Let us begin our digestive journey. Now, some of you think that digestion begins in the stomach. Well, today I'm here to set a few things straight. First of all, digestion does not begin in the stomach. Digestion actually begins in the mouth. Before we move on to digestion in the mouth, we have two types of digestion. We have chemical digestion. Yes, we have chemical digestion. When I talk about chemical digestion, I'm talking about the breakdown of food substances through chemicals. And in this case, chemicals such as enzymes. The other digestion that takes place is referred to as mechanical digestion. Now, anything that is mechanical has to be physical. So mechanical digestion is digestion that involves your teeth, your tongue. That is mechanical digestion. So remember, we have said that we have mechanical digestion, and we've talked about chemical digestion as digestion that takes place through the work of enzymes. Mechanical digestion takes place through the work of the tongue and the teeth. Mechanical digestion can also be referred to as mastication. And some of you are like, when will we begin our journey? We are now to begin our journey. I'm sure we have been able to know what ingestion, digestion is, and the two types of digestion. Our journey begins in the mouth. Now in the mouth, we have agents that work. We have the teeth. We have the tongue. And we have our digestive juice. Our first one, the one and only saliva. Now these three work together to begin digestion. So first of all, how is saliva produced? Where is it produced? Before you eat, you smell food, you see food, and the presence of food is around somewhere maybe. Maybe it's on the table or it's in the kitchen, and you feel the aroma of food from the kitchen. So what happens is that anytime you see food that you like, anytime you smell that food, your salivary glands are stimulated to produce saliva. They are now preparing themselves for digestion, especially when you're hungry. You are hungry, you have not eaten. So what happens? Your salivary glands are stimulated to produce saliva upon the sight of food. So now that saliva has been produced as one of the agents that begins digestion, your tongue and your teeth will play a vital role once you begin eating. So what do? You begin eating. You place a chunk of food to your mouth. Now remember, we have talked about digestion in the sense that we are trying to turn ingested, complex, insoluble food substances to simple, soluble, absorbable food substances. So that is what your teeth and your tongue will do. They will play that role. So you put food in your mouth, you chew them. You chew that food, your tongue rolls that food into something we call a bolus. That bolus mixes with saliva. Saliva, being our main agent of digestion, will play a vital role now in ensuring that part of the food that you have eaten will be digested. So saliva has two things. It has mucin and it has salivary amylase. Mucin will lubricate the food. Salivary amylase will digest the food, will turn the starch that was once in that rice, once in that bread, in that ugali that you have eaten, to a simpler substance. A substance that can be absorbed by the body. What substance am I talking about? I am talking about glucose. The end product will be glucose. So that is what this enzyme is meant to do, to hydrolyze starch into glucose. We move on with our journey. Remember, we were talking about food in the mouth. Now we are going to food in the stomach soon enough. Now, food doesn't directly go to the stomach. It doesn't just fall into the stomach. It has to go through some sort of passageway. The food now goes through a tube. And that tube is referred to as the esophagus. You can also call the esophagus the gullet. You can also call the gullet the esophagus, whichever you like. So your food is now in your esophagus. Now, your esophagus has circular and longitudinal muscles. What are the functions of these muscles? See, for muscles to produce movement, or for them to be able to move, they have to contract and relax. For me to be able to run, my thigh muscles must contract and relax. So what happens is that you have chewed your food into boluses. Those boluses will go down a tube. Your tube is circular. So those circular muscles will relax and contract for food to be able to move down your esophagus. The rhythmic contraction and relaxation of your esophagus has a name. The name of this process is referred to as peristalsis. So get that clearly. Now your food is moving down your esophagus through a rhythmic contraction and relaxation that is referred to as peristalsis. Now your food has gone through your esophagus. Your food is taking root to your stomach. And I'm sure most of us want to know what is in our stomach. What makes food stay in our stomach for that long? How is food digested in the stomach? So this is what happens. Before you get into the stomach, there's a muscle that allows food to get into there. And those muscles are in many parts of our organs. They allow things or substances to pass through them. They're usually called sphincter muscles. And for the stomach, we will be talking of it as the cardiac sphincter muscle. So your food is going down your esophagus and it is going to your stomach. The cardiac sphincter muscles will open, allowing food to get into your stomach. Now, once food is in your stomach, a lot of processes will move on. Now, before I move on, I want to give a general term or a general function for these two things. One, we have enzymes, and two, you have hormones. Now, what do enzymes do? Enzymes accelerate metabolic reactions. If I want starch to become glucose, I need an enzyme for that metabolic reaction to take place. What the enzyme does, it ensures that this starch is turned into glucose quickly. Now, hormones stimulate metabolic reactions. So get the difference between a hormone and an enzyme. An enzyme will accelerate the metabolic reaction. A hormone will stimulate the metabolic reaction. So, food is in your stomach. It gets into your stomach. The boluses have gotten into your stomach. And you finish your plate of food. And you feel like your stomach is full. So what will happen is that for that food to be digested, for that food to be acted upon, something has to be stimulated, and a hormone must be produced. So what will happen? The stomach will produce a hormone referred to as gastrin. This gastrin will, in turn, stimulate glands in your stomach to produce gastric juice. This gastric juice will act on the food that is in your stomach. So get that clearly. The stomach has produced gastrin, a hormone to stimulate the glands that are in the linings of the stomach to produce gastric juice. Now, gastric juice is what will act on the food that is in your stomach and will digest a substantial amount of it. Now, gastrin has components, but I want to talk about two components. I want to talk about these two components. First of all, we have hydrochloric acid. HCl, our hydrochloric acid. Then I want to talk about peptin. Now, your stomach has linings, and those linings are circular and longitudinal, just the same way they were in the esophagus. The function of these circular and longitudinal muscles are to bring the food into some sort of movement, and that movement enables the gastric juice to be able to work and to be able to function through all that food that you have eaten. Because the food is mixed in here and about, it forms something we call chyme. Now, that chyme is when your gastric juice has been able to mix well with that food that you have eaten. Now, the gastric juice, we have talked about it and we have said it has two main components, hydrochloric acid and peptin. The function of your hydrochloric acid is to work on this food and kill all the disease-causing microbes. We don't want to get sick. And so the stomach is made in a way that once gastric juice has been produced, one of those components is hydrochloric acid. It is a very strong acid, and this acid kills all the germs that are in the food. We move on. Peptin. Peptin is there in your food so that, well, the proteins that you have eaten, if you ate any, are turned from a protein to something simpler that your body can be able to absorb. So, that is the function of peptin. It turns that protein into something simpler. The simple substance of a protein is an amino acid. That way, your amino acids can be digested, can be absorbed into the body. We have talked about chyme, and now this time goes to another part of the digestive system. We now move on to the small intestine. Now, I know you're wondering what the small intestine is doing here. You're supposed to begin with the duodenum. Well, here's the thing. The small intestine runs from the duodenum. Actually, for those who do not know, the duodenum is a part of the small intestine. It is that small part of the small intestine. Your small intestine is 6 to 7 meters long. 6 to 7 meters long. and your duodenum is the first part of the small intestine. Your duodenum is 25 to 30 centimeters long. So now, food has moved from your stomach in its form of chyme to the duodenum. Before we move on, food stays in your stomach for 3 to 4 hours. So try eating at that interval. After 3 to 4 hours, have some food. Anyway, let's move on. Food has moved on to the duodenum now. And in the digestive system, we have the alimentary canal, the accessory organs, and we have digestive organs. Now, when I'm talking about the accessory organs, I'm talking about organs that aid digestion, but they're not necessarily a part of the digestive system. They are the liver and the pancreas. Now remember, I told you, hormones stimulate reactions, while enzymes accelerate reaction. Once the food or the chyme is in the duodenum, your body has to be stimulated for anything to happen. So what happens is that 2 hormones are secreted. These 2 hormones are cholecystokinin and serotonin are secreted. Those hormones are now in turn going to stimulate the bile and the pancreatic juice to function. So what happens is that the liver produces bile, manufactures bile. That bile is stored in the bile bladder. These hormones are produced. The bile bladder allows bile to go from the bile bladder through the bile ducts and into the duodenum. Once the bile is in the duodenum, the bile salts that are in the bile will turn the large fat droplets in your food to smaller fat droplets that can be absorbed by the body. Pancreatic juice will turn that fat or those oils into fatty acids and glycerol that can be absorbed by the body. Remember, digestion is all about ingesting complex food substances to something that will become simpler and more soluble food substances. So food has now moved from the duodenum to now the second part of the small intestine, which we commonly refer to as the small intestine, but is referred to as the ileum. Now, food has moved into the ileum after undergoing a long journey, and we are just about to complete our process of digestion. Food is now in the ileum. In the ileum, we have Brunner's glands. Brunner's glands, what they do is that they produce 2 things. 1, mucus, and 2, succus and entericus, which we refer to as intestinal juice. So now food, your chyme, is moving into the ileum. The Brunner's glands produce mucus and succus entericus. The mucus will allow the chyme to move smoothly through your ileum. The succus entericus will digest every single thing that was not digested in the mouth, in the stomach, in the duodenum. So everything that was not digested there will be digested by your intestinal juice. Once it has been digested by your intestinal juice, that chyme will be absorbed into the body. Now, your ileum is long, coiled, and it has small parts that increase the surface area for absorption. These small parts are referred to as villi. Get that clearly, because that is a question that is commonly tested. Your villi will ensure that this food that has been going through digestion will be absorbed. The chyme will now be absorbed in another form that is referred to as chyle. So food that was in your stomach, food that was in your duodenum, and food that went digestion all over again in the intestinal juice is referred to as chyme. Then we have chyle, which is now the end product, and that is the form in which food is absorbed into your body. I want to talk about the large intestines. So what happens is that now those products have been absorbed. Now you eat a lot of food, and not all your food is digested. Some of it has undigestible and indigestible materials, and these undigestible and indigestible materials need to come out of your body. These materials are not good for your body. They are toxic. So they have to come out of your body one way or the other. So before you go to the washroom, your food takes another journey now into the large intestine. The large intestine can also be referred to as the colon. So, food now moves into your large intestine. Now this is what happens in your large intestine. Remember, all those end products have been absorbed, but there is this undigestible and indigestible materials. They move through your colon because your colon is connected to your ileum. And for that thing to move from your ileum to your colon, there is another sphincter muscle. We call it the iliocolonic sphincter muscle. Now, food goes through your iliocolonic sphincter muscle into your large intestine. Once it is in your large intestine absorbs all the water that was in that food, all the mineral salts that was in that food, and that water and that mineral salt is taken into the body. So what remains is usually something we call feces. And now we are coming to the end. This feces will in turn be moved by the large intestine to the rectum, and in the rectum we have other sphincter muscles called rectal sphincter muscles that do the same thing. They contract and relax. So what happens is that those feces will be stored in your rectum until your rectum is full, and then that waste will be released through the rectal sphincter muscles through your anus. And that, my friends, is the process of digestion. The removal of those waste substances that we have referred to as feces through your anus is called egestion. Remember, we began with ingestion and we ended with egestion. So that, my friends, is the process of digestion. I hope you enjoyed that lesson. Remember, you are a leader in your own right. Please help all other students, all other pupils in their areas of weaknesses. We need to unite. We need to grow strong. So please Don't forget that you are a leader in your own right. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Tuan nito ega mami.